First of all, thank you very much for being here, and hopefully this will not be the last visit. So,
Definitely not.
and thank you, Kristalina, for being here also, and Mr. Abdulaziz. Few things. I think globally, as we have heard from Kristalina, there are significant divergences. There are countries who are doing very well, and there are countries who are really struggling, and there are countries in between. And therefore, if we are talking globally, we need to take that into consideration, that there are differences in positions between different countries and different regions. Second, I think the world for the last 4 years have seen multiple shocks. And those like us who had planned for the longer term will need to be agile enough to make sure that they adjust course, dealing with these multiple shocks. So you need to make sure that you are not rigid. And I've always said in economic planning, there is no egos. So it's okay to change, it's okay to adjust, it's okay to reflect on what new circumstances that calls for changes. And that, to me, is an advice that I would give everyone around the world, is that you need to make sure that, yes, you need the long-term plans, you need the vision, like Vision 2030. It is actually very helpful, not only for you as a government, but for the whole economy, and for the wider even region and international investor community to see that actually you have a plan and you are doubling down on implementation. But also you need to make sure that you adjust. So with inflation, with COVID and the serious supply chain disruption, and then inflation resulting from the serious also quantitative easing that happened as a result of COVID, and then interest rate hikes, and then geopolitical tensions, which are unfortunately increasing rather than decreasing. To me, geopolitical risks are possibly the number one risks if you look at the global economy at large. Because it's not only the geopolitical in its own. The geopolitical tensions brings with it things that are directly impacting the economies, which is fragmentation, protectionism, using economy as a serious tool to achieve geopolitical objectives in terms of limitations in trade, limitations in technology, etc. So these will need to be looked at, and policymakers will need to be very agile in dealing with this. My advice, and I will be very brief, is one is in the longer term, regardless of what's happening today, because we have seen, geopolitics happening for decades. We have seen World War I and World War II and Cold War, and so you need to focus first of all on your own people and the human capital development. This is a long-term play that is critical. Human capital is very, very critical. Unfortunately, I can say this and possibly have the means to do it in Saudi and in this region, but there are a lot of countries who will find it very difficult to provide quality education, quality healthcare to their people. Second, which is very important, and I'll cover also the low-income country part of it, is innovation and technology. If there is one tool that will actually fuel growth, quality growth, would be innovation and technology. Again, there are countries who will be able actually to do that, provide the policies and have the resources to actually implement innovation and technology. There are other countries who doesn't have basic electricities for most of their population. So you will not talk about technology, you will not talk about innovation, just provide them the basics. That said, multilateral institutions have a role to play in here, i.e. not leaving these countries behind, making sure that we provide the support. And in Saudi Arabia, I can tell you, our contribution in terms of aid and support is significantly more than our GDP percentage out of the global GDP. And that is very, very critical, really, to look at in the global scene. Finally, and I think this is very important and something that is dear to my heart, we've been talking about it at the IMF, is debt sustainability.
Yep.
You cannot expect people to focus on growth when they are really crushed with debt. And there are countries who are finding it very difficult, actually, to provide the basics to their people because of the debt. So we need to make sure that we help. The common framework that started during our presidency of the G20 is moving in the right direction. We need to make sure that it moves a lot faster. I'll stop there.
Yeah, well, the last time you and I were on a panel, it was also a panel about debt sustainability and debt reform. I do just want to follow up and talk about specifically the geopolitical tensions within the region. The war in Gaza is on many people's minds. And key, as I understood from what you're saying, is we need to see stability in order to enact these longer-term plans that we have for growth, for medium-term growth, for raising the living standards. What impact are you seeing from the war and the tension in the region right now?
I think I will try to be very brief. It is very, very unfortunate to see loss of lives, wherever that is. Civilian lives are important, whether it is in Ukraine or in Palestine or elsewhere. And therefore, when you have conflicts of this nature in your region, it puts a lot of pressure in the emotions, in the mood. And it is not secret that economy is impacted by the mood. Economy is impacted by perception, by sentiment. Second, I think cool-headed countries and leaders and people need to prevail. And you need to make sure that you actually de-escalate and do everything we can. In Saudi Arabia, I can tell you, for the last several years, we made it a very clear strategic objective that we de-escalate in the region. The region needs stability. The region needs really to focus on its people and its growth and its economy rather than really focusing on politics and conflicts. But overall, I am optimistic by nature, and I will continue to be. I think we need to work hard and push our friends and work with our allies around the world to bring more stability in this region, but also beyond.